Yes, I'm joined by Board Member Lee Corrick here from the local board. And we'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to present. We will be very brief and to the point. But I would just note that the local board has met with the applicants' representatives. That was a very full discussion. We've met with planners, thanked them for their attention, and we heard a presentation from the residents group. And we carefully considered the development and the planning for it. So I'd also note we have 3 local board members who are accredited hearings commissioners, 2 of whom are very experienced. And as a result, and as quickly as I can make it, the local board opposes the adoption of the plan change by the council, as there's no clear reason why the council should adopt it in the public interest, as the report notes. So just to note that. Secondly, it does remain the local board's view that taking the resource management, the resource consent process is the preferred option, given that the unitary plan is still very new and that the applicant had opportunity to submit for a provision in the unitary plan. And this comes back to the question I have around paragraph 39, and thanks, by the way, I should have said, for the note which explicates a little further on how clause 25.4 operates, but the possibility of taking a plan, a resource consent approach is addressed very briefly in paragraph 39. So I'm hoping somebody might ask later if the resource consent process can't be utilised because the application is for a rezoning. Isn't this very circular? Doesn't it mean that any development that would not meet the resource consent process would thereby give rise to a plan change? So there really is no option. It looks it's tautological. Council therefore has no option if it's for a rezoning other than to go for the plan change option. So it seems that option 2 isn't really an option at all, is what I'm saying. It's completely tautological. So, and that in our view undermines the integrity of the unitary plan, which most of us here spent quite a lot of time trying to get right just a few years ago. We also think that the proposed zone is not suited to small to medium-sized hospitals in residential areas with a special character overlay, that it was intended for large hospitals. So we would prefer the unitary plan be applied, and that the resource consent process is pursued. If that's not at all possible, then we reluctantly accept that the Planning Committee has no reasons under Section 25 of the RMA to decline the request for a private plan change, and that it must proceed to accept it. One last point is that the local board very much wants to be part of the council submission should there be a private plan change. And we'd hope that this might be included in the committee's resolution later today. And with that, I'll thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Well, you can take the last part as an absolute given anyway.
Oh,
and Lee, you're here for the necessary moral support, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Councillor Fisher, please.
Oh, thank you very much for speaking to council today on this. I'm really interested for you to expand a little further on the efforts that the local board went to as we were going through the unitary plan, because it does seem extraordinary to me that a proposed development of this scale would just suddenly pop up. My understanding is that when you have these sorts of developments, they're years in the making. So I'd really just like to know whether there was anything that you can add in terms of what the local board did. Secondly, the position of the local board, is this the unanimous position of the board? And I also would like to thank you very much for inviting me and Councillor Casey to be part of the presentations that were put to the local board by Southern Cross. But if you could answer those questions, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, working backwards, you're welcome. Just very briefly on the unitary plan process. The local board engaged as fully as possible in that process. So we were there at all the workshops and held meetings and so on. We were as thorough as we could be. We were very, very engaged, as you know. The point about whether or not it could have and should, such a development could and should have been dealt with then, I think is very important. I just note that the first property was bought in 2015, and I'm assuming that it wasn't just bought on a whim, which means that there must have been planning for such a development happening some time before 2015, which takes us into the unitary plan period. So, as speaking, and the board is very unanimous, and Lee would like to add a point too, so I'll hand over, except just to say that having invested so much in the unitary plan process, it is rather disappointing to see everything being unravelled at this point.
Thanks for your question, Chris. As far as the unitary plan process, we do support the current zonings, and the problem with this situation is the thin end of the wedge. This is an island of a block, and if this plan change does go ahead, we could end up with a huge multi-storey hospital in the heart of our residential area. Doesn't feel kind of appropriate.
Member Henry.
Kia ora. Do you have any information on how the proposed plan change will have an effect on the view shaft from the Maunga? And if so, has there been any discussion with the Maunga Authority on that?
Thank you. That's a good question. As you know, I was discussing it with the Maunga Authority yesterday, the general question of view shafts with the Maunga Authority yesterday. I believe I'll take guidance from the chair, but if it were to go to private plan change, then that would be a matter that would be dealt with in the process of the private plan change. You will see in figure 3 of the officer's report, there's a diagram with the view shafts and the heights and so on. It is in a view shaft, and that is a matter that we are very sensitive around. We would hope that the view shaft was not disturbed, I think, well, I'm not a planner. You'd have to ask the planners later which process provides the most protection for view shafts. Thanks.
We'll put that question when we come to the item. My understanding is you can't trump the view shaft. They are paramount. But we'll put that question at the time. Councillor Sayers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if officers might be able to answer the question that Peter raised either now or in the main item, Mr. Chair, and that was around, Peter spent quite a lot of time talking about how the resource consent and the plan change interrelate. I just wonder if it was key, you really wanted an answer on that now or in the main item. I just picked up that you put a lot of energy into asking that question.
So I'm
just
not
now.
sure whether the officers are here, but no, I'm quite happy to wait till the main item. But thank you, Greg. That's
Thank you, and you're most welcome to stay, Peter and Lee, for that item, of course. And thank you for your input here today. Would somebody like to move? Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Casey, thank you. Moved and seconded. A receipt of the presentation from the chair and member Lee Corrick on the private plan change. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Lee. Members will go now to the decision-making part of... Oh, sorry, I didn't put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that one carried.